For millenniums, humans have dreamed of one day colonizing other planets. They have filled their imaginations with wild ambitions to travel space and pioneer new planets in distant galaxies. This objective is perhaps inevitable and entirely consequential. So what can be expected when they are finally able to bring this Adam and Eve fever dream into reality? Will this venture bring with it the fruits of their labors? Or might it be that what they find will completely subvert their expectations? The year was 2199. A week had passed since Captain Adrian and his crew from Operation New Sky had landed on Sentium-X, an Earth-like planet discovered about 50 years ago. It was a big deal. Sentium-X was the very first planet classified by scientists as habitable that was actually within their reach. Earth went wild once it was discovered, and since then has been anxiously awaiting for Operation New Sky to reach the planet to learn more about it. Was it actually habitable? Could humans really colonize there? The entire crew was in the mission control room waiting for Captain Adrian to speak. The excitement was palpable. I know all of you have been waiting anxiously, but I have some good news. The detailed readings on Sentium-X's atmosphere have come in and showed something remarkable. The air here is almost identical to Earth. 75% nitrogen and 23% oxygen, argon, neon, and carbon dioxide, and trace amounts of other gases have been found, but that was to be expected. In short, we are cleared to leave the ship. I repeat, we are cleared to leave the ship. A round of applause echoed in the room. The 20-member crew of Operation New Sky had been stuck on the ship for about 7 days since landing, and it had been a tense time as they waited to complete detailed analyses of the air. They needed to make sure the air was safe to breathe before exiting the ship. If the composition was too far off from Earth, it would have been a no-go, at least not without special gear. Adrian himself couldn't believe it. They might have actually found an Earth-like planet for humans to colonize, a place where you could breathe freely. It was all too good to be true. He selected a team of 3 to be the first ones to step foot outside. Playing it safe was always the right thing to do when space traveling. No point in risking all 20 crew members at once if something went wrong. The data was clear, however, that Sentium-X was safe to breathe, so Adrian didn't have any doubts. He picked himself, Third Officer Elena Brady, and Head of Biology Landon Usoro to head outside. The 3 of them stood inside the pressurized loading bay, waiting for the door to be released and lowered. Adrian spoke over the intercom to the crew in the flight deck. "Any day now," he said. Elena looked at him, clearly anxious. "You sure our heads aren't going to pop like balloons once this door is lowered?" she asked. "About as sure as I am that I brushed my teeth this morning, so pretty confident," he replied, shrugging with a slight smile. Next to them, Landon didn't say anything, and instead just gulped air furiously like he was a marathoner drinking a gallon of water after a big race. The door beeped its alarm, and amidst a whir of mechanical groans began to lower. Light from outside began to pour in the bay. Adrian waited, his pupils dilating. After a minute, it thudded open. The 3 of them stepped out into the open air of Sentium-X and took in huge gulps of it into their lungs. To Adrian, it was rich and robust, full of moisture. He smiled to his friends. They were fine. No one's head exploded, and no one collapsed in agony. In fact, Adrian himself felt better than ever. What do you guys think? Do you think we just found another Earth? He high-fived them and began to walk around. For the next half hour, they explored around the landing site, their mouths open in awe. Sentium-X was a terrestrial planet, about twice the size of Earth, had 3 stunning moons in orbit, and 1 distant star that was the source of its energy. Large, spotty, circular bodies of water also peppered its surface, like giant wells springing forth from hidden depths. It appeared to have all of the right ingredients to support life on the surface. From their preliminary investigations, Sentium-X exhibited traits of a humid, continental climate to various types of tropical subclimates. In other words, the surface of the planet was often wet and humid, though periods of dry seasons have not been counted out. There was much to learn. This climate resulted in a rich diversity of liverworts, hornworts, and mosses. Though these divisions of plant life were probably not accurate to Sentium-X, it was the best way they could describe what they saw. Adrian looked out over the wet, rocky hills. It was a surreal feeling being on another planet, sure, but he couldn't help feel at home. Incredible, Elena said, walking up to stand beside him. Just incredible. The planet seems to be very early in its evolutionary path. Its plant life seems to suggest that what we are seeing here is a newly developing ecosystem. Compared to Earth, this planet is just a baby. He nodded. Indeed, life on the planet seemed new and microscopic compared to Earth. Not to say it wasn't diverse, just that it wasn't as fully developed. Sentium-X hosted no complex animal organisms as far as they could tell. No birds in the sky, no animals walking around the ground, nothing swam around in the water. They were alone. Instead, the rocky hills around them were covered in the deep greens and purples and browns of simple, small plant life. There's not even any trees, Adrian said. Nothing here's more than a few centimeters tall. You look disappointed, Elena replied. But rest assured, this is a good thing. The last thing we want when colonizing a new planet is competition from other wildlife. Landon finally joined the two of them and patted them on the shoulder. At his feet was a case filled with vials and containers. He opened it up and pointed inside. We should wrap this up for now. Let's try to collect some samples before we head back inside. I want some plant samples, and I'm sure our chemistry guys wouldn't mind some samples of the water. Pull the plants up carefully if you can to keep the samples intact. Then grab some soil and pack it up separately. It's time to see what we're actually working with here, eh? Adrian and Elena nodded. For the next hour, they carefully packed and sealed up samples of the environment for the team to start testing on. Afterwards was the big celebration dinner. The whole crew of Operation New Sky had many reasons to celebrate, and finally being able to breathe the open air wasn't the only one. The science they would gather here would send Earth, humanity's home base, into an eager uproar. Captain Adrian felt confident that once they confirmed their findings of a habitable planet, it wouldn't be long until more people were sent here, to start colonizing here, to start a new life here, to make the dream of living on a new planet a reality. He drank more than he should have that night, but he deserved it. They all deserved it. We are going to be heroes, Adrian thought. The following morning, Adrian woke up with a heavy headache and a cough. He nearly fell out of bed, feeling dizzy and out of balance. Whoa, he muttered. No more drinks for me today. It wasn't the drinking that caused him to feel this way, however. When he conducted his morning duties, it was discovered that half the crew woke up sick. There was a lot of persistent coughing and scratchy throats. It was more than enough to cause alarm. Getting sick in an isolated space environment was not common, so it was odd. He brushed it off as a bad batch of food or drink. It had to be something they ate, right? They had all been under an immense amount of stress, too. It was probably fatigue. Adrian ordered the crew, especially those affected, to take the day off for some good R&R, himself included. His head pulsated. He could feel every heartbeat, like it was a hammer inside his head. 2 aspirins later, and the body pain was still there. Lying down in bed was all he could do. He tried reading a book to distract himself when his room got buzzed. Yeah? He asked through the speaker. Captain, it's Landon. Please come to the lab, it's urgent. I'm just getting cozy here, can it wait? Adrian asked. You're gonna want to see this, Landon replied. He got dressed and put on his boots. It was tough and made him feel out of breath. I really need to step up my workouts. Landon was the head of biology of Operation New Sky and was also medically trained, meaning he also doubled as one of the ship's doctors. With a crew as small as theirs, many of them had to be trained in more than one field. It made things a lot easier and acted as a safeguard in case something happened to one of them. The door to the lab slid open. The workspace was full of odds and ends, beakers, vials, fluids, agents, and reagents. At the far end was a wall of electronic equipment and biosafety cabinets. Whatever they needed to run their experiments and send data back to Earth was there. Landon was wearing a work gown and black gloves, but pulled them off once he saw Adrian. Landon didn't waste time. I've started to run tests on the biological material we collected yesterday. It's interesting. Yeah, how so? Adrian asked. Landon's face scrunched into a frown of confusion. Much of it is what we expected, completely new classes and species of non-vascular land plants, the earth names of which really wouldn't be suited here. But there's something else. He paused. All of the samples we collected did have something in common. They were all coated in some sort of micromycetes. English, please, Adrian replied, combing his brain to recall if he knew what that was. It's a fungus, or at least that's what it looks like. A primitive organism, but nothing like I've seen before. It's on all of the plants, in the soil, in the water. It's everywhere, Captain. He pulled up a few pictures of what he had managed to capture on his computer. Long, bubbly tendrils floated around a blurry mass that looked like a tree. The bottom of the mass had long, sharp, dagger-like protrusions. It was enough of a wake-up call to guess where Landon was going with all of this. "You don't think," was all Adrian could manage to say. Landon didn't reply, and instead told him that he needed to run some more tests. Adrian left, and for the first time since the mission started felt a pang of uncertainty. His head pounded. He needed some rest. It didn't take long for the news to travel around the spaceship that an alien fungi was discovered, and it was quite possible that everyone on board was now infected with it. No more parties were thrown that night. Instead, Captain Adrian ordered a full lockdown and isolation of the ship and its crew. Everyone was to stay inside their rooms until more was known, and, of course, going outside was strictly forbidden. The next day came, and after a head count, it was determined that 15 out of the 20 people on board had developed symptoms. Landon and his assistants gathered samples from everyone to do more testing. It was clear that they were all sick from something, likely a gift from Sentium-X. Things did not get better from here. On the second morning after stepping foot outside, Adrian couldn't stop coughing and shivering even in the shower. His lungs sounded like wet popcorn being thrown against a wall. Out from his mouth came pouring blotches of black liquid. He watched the stuff spiral down the drain in disdain. This was bad. After everyone on board had become sick, an emergency meeting was held in the mission control room. Everyone was talking in hushed but panicked tones. Landon stood up and spoke with authority despite looking sick himself. "It seems that Sentium-X is home to a lot more than we thought. The tests came back positive. Whatever we are afflicted with is the same as whatever is on the plants. It appears that it is some sort of opportunistic fungi. The coughing everyone has come down with is caused by it. The fungi has taken up residence in the lungs, causing fungal pneumonia in a lot of you. I can't say why, but our lungs are favorable reproduction grounds for it, causing it to multiply." Landon went on, but Adrian didn't listen. It was a massive oversight they should have seen coming. He was disappointed in himself. Landon prescribed each of them high doses of an antifungal medication. Fluconazole, he called it. It was apparently the best chance at treating their infection. It was circulating in their blood, too. He caught that much more of the speech. After Landon was done, Adrian pulled him aside, a new wild thought floating through his mind. He whispered, "This thing, we're not talking about something terminal, are we? Can it kill us?" Landon looked as scared as him. "Captain, we are years away from civilization and infected with a totally unknown alien fungi. Your guess is as good as mine." He wiped his head with a handkerchief. Later, Adrian knocked on Elena's door to check on her. "Just a minute," she yelled through cluttering behind the door. When it opened, Elena had a towel folded over her arm. "You doing okay?" he asked. "This is all going to hell," she replied. "It looks so harmless out there, peaceful. This fungi, Adrian, we should have been more careful. Who would have thought our whole mission is in jeopardy?" She started crying and he gave her a quick hug. "We are going to get over this and figure things out. This sort of thing comes with space travel. It's a minor hiccup." Elena didn't look convinced. In fact, she did something odd. She took the towel and rubbed it on her sweat-soaked arm and showed it to him. Long streaks of black stained its surface. The fungi was coming through their pores. That night was restless, long, and with the persistent coughing, Adrian barely got any sleep. When he did wake up, His pillow was stained black with his trajectory of phlegm. Everyone had to follow an emergency biological hazards protocol, following proper disposal and cleaning of infected materials. But it was hard. The fungi got everywhere. On clothes, on the beds and sheets, on plates and dishes. This wasn't even mentioning if someone accidentally coughed on a wall. Black sprays appeared on walls like gunshots. If they were not cleaned quickly, they congealed like clotting veins. The medicine did not treat or cure the infection. In fact, they did not even help their symptoms. It all got worse. Horribly, horribly worse. Days went by as they waited, hoped, and prayed. But as time passed and all treatments failed, the fungi spread and became more rampant. Eventually, it was a struggle to try to put 2 feet on the ground. The corner of Captain Adrian's eye became inflamed and turned black. It hurt to cry, but he couldn't help it, and that made it worse. A vicious cycle, and his tears were black. The infection caused their skin to itch so bad they scratched right through the surface. These patches became infected and turned black. The sweat coming from his skin was black. His very blood was infected with the fungi and its spores, he knew. What was remarkable was how untreatable it was. Nothing worked. Then again, all the treatments were based off of organisms from Earth, not Sentium-X. But still, you'd think something would work. And his lungs, they sounded and felt so much like the crunch of dry paper that he wanted to rip them out of his chest. In the mirror, Adrian checked his teeth and gums. They were both tinted dark from whatever was coming up from his lungs. He looked like a zombie. When 3 crew members died in a single day from complications of the fungi, Adrian knew that was the end. Game over. The infection caused their lungs to fill with fluid, whether they died from not being able to breathe or the fact that the fungi had circulated to every corner of their body. They didn't know. It was probably both. As their bodies broke down, so too did their organs start to fail, struggling to filter out the toxins. It wasn't some crazy alien animal that was going to take them out. It was a fungi. A stupid fungi. Landon and his team continued their research as best they could. All they could say was how aggressive it was, how fast it multiplied and grew inside the human body, turning it into a factory for its own kind, how all it took was a few spores to infect human cells. Despite how grim the situation was, Landon kept going on about how fascinating it all was. He was definitely a scientist at heart. It took all his energy to gather the data and send a report back to Earth. Its headline? Sentium-X, not suitable for human life. As he hit send, he breathed a sigh of relief. At least they did their job and followed it through. They went there to find out if Sentium-X was suitable for colonization. It was not. Back in her own room, Elena recorded a message of her own to her mother. On video, she told her about how much she loved her and how she wished she could see her again. She left out the part about the pain. It was too much for herself to bear. She hit send. A boil was on her arm. When she scratched it, she watched a disturbingly beautiful cloud of spores swirl in the air. Are there any truly habitable planets out there in the ether of space for humans to explore, or just a handful of beautiful yet toxic worlds out there waiting to kill us? This story creates many hypothetical questions and even less answers. What if there is no such thing as a habitable planet? Let's think about it. The evolution of planet Earth and its species of plants and animals is bound to be drastically different than planets hosting different life forms. Different evolutions crossing billions of years. What this likely means is that life forms from different planets might have completely different organic and inorganic structures, right down to their very own DNA, structures of which might only be suitable for the planets they evolved from. Think of it this way: if life on another planet evolved from a radiation-rich environment, those organisms themselves might emit radiation to a level where humans could die from even being in close proximity to them, even if they aren't a danger in and of themselves. This lack of human compatibility could be endless. If one single bacterium, or virus, or fungus, or something else completely undiscovered exists that humans have never had exposure to or have treatments for, there's a good chance the body will view it as a threat if exposed to it. This could be a logistical nightmare. If humans get to a planet with foreign life forms, how could you test everything to make sure they don't respond negatively to it? This isn't even to mention incubation periods for things like viruses. Have you arrived to a new planet and seen some delicious looking alien space potatoes you want to try and eat? Well, that might not be the best idea either. Who knows what that potato is made of, and even if it is made up of the same kind of starches and proteins as those on Earth, do the vitamins of foreign planets look the same? The minerals? Are there completely undiscovered elements out there waiting to be added to our periodic chart? Plants on Earth have a wide variety of toxins too that even touching can cause an allergic reaction. Many plants and animals on Earth have toxins that can kill you too. If everything on Earth seems like it's trying to kill you, just think of foreign life on a foreign planet. It seems like even being in the presence of them would be posing a risk. The point here is that what we call habitable planets doesn't necessarily mean what is habitable to humans, just that it has the potential to hold life of its own. In other words, two different evolutions of life could mean two completely different sets of conditions to sustain that life. That one trying to sustain its life off the other could spell death. Nutrition and energy production could be vastly different. So my question to all of you is this: is there really such thing as a habitable planet? A planet with life that humans could colonize? Or is it all a huge paradox? Does stepping foot on another planet like Sentium-X pose too many hidden risks, more that can be analyzed and foreseen? I'll tell you what I think. I think if we get to the point of being able to explore a planet with life other than our own, we need to exercise care and plan ahead. We shouldn't be discouraged by the problems we face, but instead driven by them. Yes, many hidden mysteries would surely be lurking on the surface of habitable planets, and potentially dangerous ones at that, but our curiosity will drive us forward, and so too can our common sense. We can take precautions when and where needed and learn from our mistakes. Maybe habitable planets aren't all that dangerous and we will fit right in. And if there are as many out there as people say there is, surely this could be the case for a few. With that being said, it might not be wise to go around touching and eating everything you see, even with those space potatoes looking as delicious as they do. In the wild west of space, looks can be deceiving.